Presented by BetMGM.
Tip-off Game 5 NBA Finals, about 16 minutes or so here as we have the pregame show just kind of ticking along. Speaking of ticking along here, Paul Skeens, Trista, up to 6 strikeouts now, bottom of the 4th.
Well, what are you going to do?
Hey, he's still under. That's what matters.
I just
You're
need under
there.
9. That's
You're still there. 4-1 lead over the Cincinnati Reds in the bottom of the 4th. Yeah, listen. Oh, Philly's up 6-1 now on the Padres, too. They really blew that thing wide open.
Big bounce-back game for them.
Yeah, it really is. Big one for them. Blue Jays getting crushed by the Red Sox 5-1, so that's going to be dead. Clearly, I shouldn't have taken the Blue Jays' money line. I thought that matchup was good for them pitching-wise, and clearly it wasn't. Everybody seems to hit off of Pivetta, but not in this game for the Blue Jays. Speaking of baseball, Bret Boone jumps on with us, 3-time All-Star, 4-time Gold Glove Award winner, 2-time Silver Slug winner as well, and, of course, the host of the Bret Boone podcast as well. And, of course, we are also joined by, he's also Odyssey MLB Insider as well. You got to make sure you get all of the different things there. And Insider Calls are presented by Grainger with supplies and solutions for every industry. Grainger has the right product for you. Call clickgrainger.com or stop by. And I mentioned, of course, Bret is the host of the Bret Boone podcast as well. A lot of injuries for the Dodgers over the last, it's like 24 hours for them or so at this point. When you look at, obviously, the Dodgers are loaded, clearly, but Yamamoto's out. You know that Mookie Betts is now going to be out. Even with all the talent on that roster, how is that going to affect the Dodgers over the next few weeks or so as they wait for them to come back?
Well, I think anytime you have 2 stars of Betts and Yamamoto's magnitude, of course that's going to take a hit to the organization. But that being said, I think coming off the top, I mean, LA is so talented, they're so deep, that's what makes them so good. I mean, you look at a Mookie Betts, he goes down, but you still got a Smith, a Freddie Freeman, Ohtani to pick up the slack, where other organizations, when their big guy goes down, you're in trouble. These guys can weather the storm. You look at a Yamamoto situation, going down with that strained rotator cuff, but you still got Glass now. You've got Stone, you've got Paxton, you got Miller coming back, and from what I'm hearing, Kershaw's about to go on a rehab assignment. So that's the luxury that the Dodgers have is when somebody with the star power of a Betts and a Yamamoto, they've got more than enough to kind of weather the storm. They're in first place over there in the National League West. I think they got an 8-game lead right now. So you never want to have these injuries, but for them right now, if you're gonna have it right now. I think with this new postseason schedule and how they've made it with the 12 teams, I think the Dodgers are well aware that the best team doesn't necessarily mean you're going to the World Series. It's much easier to get to the World Series, but I think this modern-day game and this modern-day postseason game, it's not as important. The important thing is getting a seat at the table and being ready and getting hot right when the playoffs are about to start.
So, Bret, I was at Camden Yards yesterday, Corbin Burns versus Zach Wheeler, and what I was imagining could be a World Series matchup. And I thought the Orioles would be able to get to Zach Wheeler, but I didn't think they were going to rough him up like they did. 8 earned runs. And it got to the point where me as a casual fan said, why is he being still left out there? If I'm him, I am absolutely pissed. His ERA went from 2.16 to 2.83 in that game. As someone who's been around the game as long as you, in the clubhouse, is that a point of friction for someone like Zach Wheeler and the manager, or no?
No, you go out throughout the course of a season. It's 162 games. It's a long season. It's on the manager to have that relationship with the individuals, because everybody's not the same and everybody isn't treated the same. You earn certain treatment. You earn a certain amount of trust, and there's got to be a rapport. And I use the word trust. That's the most important thing. There's got to be a trust between manager, pitcher, manager, player, whoever that is, to make the right decision at the right time. So I think it's a bump in the road. It's really not going to be that big of a deal.
Speaking of Camden Yards, we're going to have the Orioles and Yankees starting a series. Garrett Cole is going to make his return for the Yankees on Wednesday. First start of the year for him. What do you expect in terms of like performance, innings, that type of thing? Do you think there'll be a limit on him, or will they just be full go?
Well, now today's game, there's always limits in there. We're always
No, that's
limiting
true. You're right.
everybody.
Yeah.
We can't. God forbid we go past a certain pitch count. Somebody might not get hurt. Yeah, I'm sure he's going to be on a pitch count. Probably that's going to be worked out well before he even takes the field. The good thing is he's been feeling good in his rehab. This Yankee team, unbelievable to me. I didn't expect this at all coming out of spring training, especially when your Cy Young winner of a year ago, Garrett Cole, who's the anchor of that staff, he goes down. There was a lot of question marks. Stroman coming over. Rodon, was he going to bounce back from the Cy Young caliber season he had a few years earlier? The guy they were expecting had a 6+ Ernie in 2023. He's been great. Stroman's been great. Clark Schmidt, who's on the IL right now, but has really grown up immensely right before my eyes. 2 years ago, I remember watching Clark Schmidt saying, this guy cannot pitch on a championship caliber ball club in a rotation, maybe in the bullpen, but not in the rotation. He's proven me wrong. He's grown up a ton. Nestor Cortez has done well. Now all of a sudden they've done this well this far into the season, and you're getting your ace back in Garrett Cole. I expect him to be on a pitch limit, but from what I saw in his rehab assignments so far, he looks like the Garrett Cole we're used to.
Yeah, I know it's a long season, but obviously an important series for the Orioles and Yankees, given the fact that they're separated by a game and a half in the AL East right now. Two of the best run differentials in Major League Baseball as well between those two teams. When you look at this Orioles team, you just obviously talked about how great this Yankees team is, but the Orioles obviously talented in their own right. Do you see them as a true threat that can overtake the Yankees and actually win the division when it's all said and done? Or does the AL East feel like, as long as obviously the big names stay healthy, it's the Yankees to lose?
I think you hit it on the head right there. Big names got to stay healthy. That's what's been the Yankees' problems the last 3-4 years. Since I've been paying a little closer attention when my brother took over. Because, by the way, I can't stand the Yankees. I've had my heart broken. I've had my heart broken many times at old Yankee Stadium. So I don't have a bias towards the new one. But, of course, I keep a special eye on watching how Aaron's doing in New York. And the one thing I've watched with this Yankee club, and I don't want to jinx them, they have been so injury riddled over the past 3 or 4 years. They can't stay on the field. And this year, they've remained really healthy throughout. I think a huge key for that Yankee team, and I think the key, is Stanton's having a presence in the middle of that lineup. He wasn't a factor a year ago. Of course, the Aaron Judge, the Juan Sotos, they're the MVP candidates. They're the star players. But the fact that you've got Stanton, who's a threat right now and hitting home runs, I think he's got 17 or 18 in the middle of that lineup as a deterrent, man, it makes Judge and Soto even better. I think that's been a huge key, obviously coupled with that starting rotation. Bullpen's been solid, but the bullpens, that's kind of been their go-to the last 3 or 4 years. They've had that power bullpen. Looking at that Baltimore Orioles team, man, they are young and talented. 101, I think it was 101 wins a year ago. And I thought, yeah, these guys are young, they're talented, but 101 maybe a fluke. They got bounced pretty quick in the playoffs last year. I've been watching them this year. This team is really good, really young, a ton of talent. Corbin Burns coming over just solidifies and gives you a bona fide guy to look to. And it's important on young pitching staffs to have a guy like Burns at the front of that rotation. The other guys can watch and learn from. He's a perennial Cy Young guy. He's doing it again this year. That team's tough. It wouldn't surprise me. I think that's going to go down to the wire, that division. It's the Yankees and Baltimore. You look at the elite teams. I think there's 2 elite teams in each league. In the American League, it's obviously the Yankees and Baltimore. In the National League, I think it's the Phillies and it's the LA Dodgers. But, yeah, that American League East is going to go down to the wire, I think, with the Yanks and Baltimore, and it's going to come down to who can stay healthy.
The Cubs, Brett, are in full meltdown mode. Chicago fans, you can't get them to say a nice thing about Dansby Swanson or Ian Happ or Nico Horner. And you looked at what they did last year when they kind of came alive, had a bad May, but their August was elite. In terms of from what you saw last year and what you see this year, are the Cubs who they were last year and they're just in a slump, or was that just kind of a fluke and they're closer to what they look like right now?
Well, when I looked at the beginning of the season, when I looked at this National League Central, I just thought, well, if it's not the weakest division in baseball, it's the second weakest, the American League Central being the other. I was wrong with the American League Central, but I look at this Central, nothing really I was in Cincinnati early in the season, watched that ball club. Yeah, I saw some things. I thought, oh, it's a better Cincinnati Reds team, but I wasn't overly impressed. Milwaukee's just been one of those resilient, top of the division right now, one of those resilient franchises, organizations. I think they've got a great culture. They lost their skipper. Council went to the Cubs, and in spite of it, they're doing what they're doing right now. Milwaukee atop that division. They hit at the top of the league. They pitch at the top of the league. But looking at that Cub team, with that starting pitching, which has done a great job this year, I'm very surprised that they're sitting where they're sitting. Usually Wrigley Field, winds blowing in, blowing out. It can make a huge difference from an offensive perspective day to day. But I think in the long run, because you're the home team at Wrigley Field, you're kind of used to it, and it usually plays as a little bit of a home field advantage, more day games than everybody else. That plays to your advantage when you're set for it at the beginning of the year. But I look up and down that lineup, nobody's doing anything. They're at the bottom of the division, or the bottom of the league in all the offensive categories, with the exception maybe stealing bases. They steal some bases. But that starting rotation is good. Usually when you have elite starting pitching, that at least keeps you in the game, and not at the bottom of, in my opinion, one of the worst divisions in baseball.
It kind of reminds me, and maybe I'm tripping, and you know more about this team than me, obviously being as close to them as you are with your brother managing them. Do you remember, it was either last year or the year before, elite starting pitcher, but they just couldn't buy a hit. And the Yankees, outside of Aaron Judge, were just anemic. Does it feel kind of like that right now, where it's like something that maybe finds its level later on in the summer?
Yeah, I think so. I think there's too much talent there to be this dismal for this long on the offensive side of the board. You get Bellinger back. It's the big offseason talk with Scott Boras. All the big free agents he had. Bellinger ends up getting a decent deal, but with Bellinger, I think he's a good player. Don't get me wrong. But he was out there, and there was a lot of talk. Why isn't this guy being signed? I look at Cody Bellinger like I look at a Blake Snell on the pitching side that left San Diego, went to San Francisco. Cody Bellinger was an MVP years ago. For about 2 or 3 years there, what the heck happened? Then all of a sudden, he's comeback player of the year. I don't put that much stock in that. I think he's a good player. He's having a decent year in the middle of that lineup. But the guys like Swanson that signed the big deal and expected big things out of him at shortstop, one of the elite shortstop, he's not living up to it. Horner's got 2 home runs. He's just kind of pinging it along. Tauschman, I don't know. I look at this team. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it was the expectations with the new skipper coming over, Council. I can talk about skippers on another day. There's not enough time for it. Players win games, and skippers lose games. That's what we like to say, especially when we're the player. But I don't know what's going on with this team. I mean, I've been on teams like that where you underperform, and you just underperform team-wise. I think that's the case right there. Definitely more talent on the offensive side than they're showing thus far.
Talking to Bret Boone, BetMGM tonight. Insider calls are brought to you by Grainger, for the ones who get it done. Grainger offers professional-grade supplies and solutions made for every industry and backed by product experts. Call, click Grainger.com, or stop by. Can't have you on and not talk about the Mariners and what they're doing this year. You obviously played on some great Mariners teams back when you were in the majors, 116 wins for that one team, and now you got a team this year that's 11-4 in the month of June. That's best in the majors. When you look at what they are right now as a team, what do you think their ceiling is this season?
Ceiling as far as how far they can go in the postseason?
Yeah. Like what would be like the max that they could do this year?
Top to bottom starting rotation, my opinion, best pitching in all of baseball. 1 through 5 in that starting rotation. On any given night, you're facing a number 1. And that goes from Castillo to Gilbert to Kirby to Miller to Wu. Miller and Wu being the youngest of the 5. Castillo obviously being the big free agent that came over from Cincinnati. But I watch this team a lot, and I pay close attention. That starting pitching is so elite. Like I said, there's no break in that rotation. You're getting Castillo tonight. You don't care if they're getting the 5th guy. I remember in the 90s when I was playing for the Cincinnati Reds, I'd be looking 2 weeks in advance. And this is back before cell phones and the internet. And we'd get that USA Today, and I'd start looking ahead 2 weeks because I know we're going to Atlanta, and I know we got Maddox, and I know we got Smoltz, and I know we got Glavine. Hopefully we get that 4th or 5th starter. And it seemed like it never happened with this Mariner team, there is no fourth or fifth starter. Any given night, all these guys are electric, knockout. Bullpen's been solid. Munoz is their closer. He needs to remain healthy for them to be good. For me, the offense, I did a show the other day, and they asked me, "What do you think about this Mariner offense?" Because they're at the bottom of the American League in every offensive category. They strike out more than any other team in baseball.
Yeah.
But I came up with this phrase: they've got a nose for the finish line. They're clutch. They've got some big hits. They've won a lot of games late. And sometimes teams have that. And once you do it, you walk a team off. And then the next night you come back in the seventh inning down 2 and you win. It starts to snowball. And you start to feel like, well, let's just keep it close because late somebody's going to be a hero tonight. I think that's what Seattle has going on right now. It's a vulnerable division this year. Brett,
we're up against the hard out. I'm so sorry. They're literally kicking us off now. You have been awesome. We would love to have you back. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Brett.
Bret Boone
you
podcast.
got it, guys.
It's BetMGM tonight.